What's going on, everybody? I wanted to make this video to let you guys know what I think are the strongest guns in Apex Legends Season 22, and I'm not going to waste your time, so let's get right into it. We'll start off with shotguns and the highly touted Mozambique. The Mozambique has always been super underrated as it puts roughly 45 damage together with all 3 shots hitting the body and has quite a bit of range. By itself, I'm putting it in the C tier, but in Season 22, you can actually dual wield these things, and they are the most busted gun we've had in a long while. The extra 6 bullets, the fast strafe speed, and easier spread to aim from a distance makes these infuriating to combat. They're easily S tier even without the hammer points or a shotgun bolt. Yeah, they're that good. Next, we have the EVA 8, which can be really good when you have a higher tier bolt on it, but it is not the gun you want off drop. Connect all the pellets to the body and it does around 56 damage per shot, which is great. You have to make every shot count and be pretty much in their face. Did I mention its fire rate is not the fastest? D tier. The Peacekeeper is an Apex Legends favorite, and rightfully so. This gun is a lot of fun to use. It is not the best shotgun this season, but it's also not the worst. This weapon got a spread change in Season 22, which makes it easier to connect more pellets onto the enemy. The only drawback with the PK is it's not forgiving in the slightest, and it's truly a big skill gun in Apex Legends. I'm putting it in B tier, but only because the Mastiff is way more forgiving and packs a massive punch in Season 22. Whatever they did with the spread change to the Mastiff, holy hell, this thing is an animal. Not only does it have a pretty fast fire rate without a shotgun bolt, it also does insane damage from mid-range. It's actually pretty hilarious doing 60 damage from a sizable distance away and getting up close to deal an average of around 90. Mastiff is definitely one of the best choices for close range combat this season, and it's going in the A tier. Onto pistols, we have the P2020, which actually got a pretty good buff, doing 21 damage to the body and 25 to the head. It's a single fire weapon and is heavily outclassed by a mass majority of the weapons on the list, which is why we're putting it in D tier. That's until we pick up another P2020 and turn these bad boys into automatic akimbos. The P2020 greatly benefits from being an akimbo simply for having double the mag in a very easy ADS. You definitely have to connect with more shots to be effective with the P2020 than the Mozam, but as with the Mozam, slap hammer points on these and you're going to be absolutely shredding your opponents before they know it. B tier. The RE45 doesn't really feel that great at the moment, with so many other close range weapons simply being much better at the moment. You can put hammers on these and use them for mid game, but there's so many better options, and unfortunately this is just one of the weakest weapons at the moment. D tier. The Wingman is the most satisfying weapon in all of Apex Legends and has been notoriously strong throughout its tenure in Apex Legends. Locking the Wingman to just sniper ammo and also 6 shots per reload makes the weapon pretty hard to use effectively. I don't believe there's truly many weapons in Apex that can't be super effective, but if I had to pick what's more likely to be consistently good, there's a ton of weapons I'm picking over the Wingman, and that's why I'm putting it at C. Don't hate me, and I also believe you're hitting 90% of your shots. On to snipers, we have the Charge Rifle, which can be a pain in the butt to go up against, but it's also incredibly hard to use at times. I feel like I'd almost have any other weapon at any stage of the game, and despite it doing more damage the further out you are, it's just not worth picking up. D tier. The longbow is another weapon that lacks a little bit. This weapon can be very effective at annoying people from afar, third parties, and doing enough damage to farm your Evo shield a tad. But rarely does this weapon do well in a clean 3v3 with its slow fire rate and damage that doesn't do enough to scare the opponent. Maybe this weapon gets pushed up to B if it can still take the Skull Piercer, but for now, I have it in C. The Sentinel is also a weapon that can be pretty slow. However, it's a pretty crazy gimmick if you have spare shield cells. If you find one of these off drop, immediately wind it up to boost the damage because any headshot on white helmet is going to do a whopping 158 damage, which is an instant knock early game. Not to mention the iron sight accuracy on this gun makes it actually pretty okay for close to mid-range fighting. A tier and a baby brother to the most powerful sniper in Apex, the Kraber. Doing 144 damage to the body and 189 to a purple helmet, this weapon, more times than not, gets the knock and the fight started for your team. You only get 12 bullets with this thing, but surprisingly, it's more than enough to get a couple kills and annoy everyone in the lobby. S tier, it's always been in the care package for a reason. Onto the Marksmen, which are pretty much all in the middle of the pack in terms of strength. These weapons are mainly meant to be used from mid to long range and aren't my first pick to use up close. The 30-30 repeater is still a strong pick. It can be very pesky from a good distance away, dinking away at your health. 39, 39, 49, 39. It's still a strong weapon and a great choice to pick up, especially if you're bunkering down and holding a spot in zone. B tier. The G7 Scout is also in the same exact position as the 3030, where it's really good from a distance and good at holding down the fort in zone. The G7 has a much faster fire rate for a little less damage per shot. It's a good weapon. I just wouldn't want to try 50-50 an LMG or assault rifle from mid-range with it. B tier. The triple take is a tad easier to use than the two weapons prior and can be a safer pick to use mid and long range. It does, however, take a little while to charge to get the full effect out of the triple take and often loses to automatic weapons. Still, all three of these guns are very, very, very viable and are once again insanely good at locking it down. B tier. The one marksman, however, that shines the brightest is the Bocek bow. With a really fast windup and ability to spam a lot of damage in such a short time, it is one of the couple reasons why it's been in the care package for so long. This is not the weapon you want to be caught out in the open with because you're probably done for. Not to mention, it's not completely useless up close due to the shatter caps hop up, which makes it a pretty viable hipfire option. S tier. LMG's got a pretty good buff in Season 22 with the new hop-up Gun Shield Generator, which is essentially just a Gibby arm shield, and a really good hipfire buff, which locks the spread tighter the longer you use your hipfire, which is why the Devotion is the best weapon in all of Season 22. Having a 54 bullet mag and turbocharger ingrained makes it near impossible to lose with this weapon. Half the time you won't even comprehend how you died because of how fast the Devotion will rip through your health, on top of having a near perfect hipfire. S tier, and personally I think it's the best weapon in all of Apex Legends. Next, we have the L-Star, which I think has always been pretty good and benefits heavily from the LMG changes, and a majority of the energy weapons being meta at the moment. The one downside with the L-Star was burning through ammo. However, this thing is an absolute monster, and if you're getting the timing down, you can take down multiple teams without even reloading. It's a really solid option, short, medium, and long range. You just have to be careful with your ammo consumption. I contemplating putting this in B, but seeing how versatile it is, I decided to put it in A. Spitfire also benefits heavily from these LMG buffs. Already a pretty big beater from mid to long range, this weapon can shred multiple teams. Where it falters in comparison to the L-Star is a long reload time, slower rate of fire, and honestly one of the worst iron sights in the game. Still good enough to carry throughout the entire game, so we're putting it in B. Lastly is the Rampage. Man, this weapon can be devastating, but it is one of the harder weapons to time and probably the hardest LMG to use. The damage per bullet is pretty insane, doing 26 to the body, but the fire rate is not the best, making it a tough sell against a ton of weapons on this list. I wanted to factor in the Rampage being charged up since I factored it in with the Sentinel, but it's just way more realistic having a ton of shield cells on you than a ton of thermites. C tier, but this gun is probably leaning towards A charged up. On to SMGs, we'll start with the Alternator. The Alternator is a very reliable weapon in Apex Legends, having good close and mid-range damage and accuracy. It is an insanely good option for a fight-off drop, but it loses its touch later on in the game. Disruptors are also not in the loot pool at the moment, which hurts it a tad as well. C tier. Burst guns are insanely strong in Apex and have been for a while, which is why the Prowler is in a weird spot being a burst SMG. The Prowler can hit hard, but there's times where you would much rather have a Hemlock or Nemesis and use it similar to how a Prowler would be used. You're not doing as much damage as a Prowler, but the versatility of other guns I think is way more valuable than the damage difference between a full burst of a Prowler going against a Hemlock or Nemesis. It's a solid weapon, just outclassed at the moment. C tier. The R99 is in the care package and it got a really good buff. Increased ADS strafe, improved recoil damage, and damage increased to 14 at close range, which helps the weapon be very reliable. However, it has a damage fall off at 11 plus meters, dropping it to 10 per bullet, which makes it a good weapon, but a very underwhelming care package weapon. A tier. The Volt has been consistently very strong these past couple seasons, and only benefits being an energy weapon, which means ammo should be easy to find on boxes. It might not be able to pump out damage as fast as the R99, but it is extremely easy to use at mid-range, all while doing 16 per bullet, as well as having a fantastic hipfire accuracy. A tier. Lastly, the Car SMG. The Car is a very versatile weapon, being able to swap between using light and heavy ammo. The damage is solid for its rate of fire and has a really good hipfire, but falls off at the mid-range a tad. The weapon meta in Season 22 is in a very good state when the Car is one of the weaker SMGs in the meta, and that's not a bad thing at all. B tier, but this weapon teeters on A tier. Finally, the assault weapons and mainstays of Apex Legends. The Havoc is still the top dog and best floor weapon in Apex Legends, despite a small hipfire nerf. Don't be fooled by the wind-up time. This weapon, even without a turbocharger, absolutely shreds with precision. It's insanely useful at all ranges and is one of the last weapons I'd want to challenge in a 1v1. S tier. The Flatline got a small nerf to the mag in Season 22, and I didn't really feel it warranted it. The Flatline has consistently been strong, but it's always been one of the more skillful weapons in Apex with moderate to tough handling at long range. B tier, which leaves the best heavy assault weapon to the Hemlock. The Hemlock did receive a very warranted nerf to damage from 20 to 19 per bullet, and the nerf to the higher tier magazines, but it is still an absolute beast and will take down the opposition in a heartbeat. Burst weapons seem to always dominate, as it's one of the easier ways to deal damage successfully from mid to long range, which is why the Hemlock is still a must pick and belongs in the A tier. The R301 is probably the most notable and loved weapon in all of Apex Legends, and actually got a solid buff this season with the mag size going up by 3 bullets, which allows for a little more wiggle room with this thing. The R301 is old reliable and does solid damage with very easy recoil and incredibly good hipfire. I would recommend this weapon to anyone who is either new to the game or doesn't have the best recoil control. B tier for the most loved weapon in Apex Legends. Lastly, the Nemesis, which is a big sleeper this season. It snuck its way into being one of the best weapons on the floor in Apex Legends, and oftentimes feels like it's the only solution to combat a lot of the headache weapons in Apex Legends. The burst ramps up the more you shoot it, which makes it deadly at mid to long range, and it's very surprisingly easy to use at close range. I would pick this weapon well over the Hemlock in Season 22 due to the damage output and how easy this weapon is to use. S tier. That's the list, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down below, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Take care and much love, everybody.